So we are on the doorstep of another Lent, Lent 2026. So we're here at Fat Tuesday or Shrove Tuesday, however you want to refer to it as, the day before Lent. And I have to say, I always, on the Tuesday before Lent, I usually fix me my favorite dessert. My favorite dessert is like that, it's like a cookie bar recipe, but you put in like a third a cup of Heath bar chips to make it, it makes it really moist. And then I put some Breyer's vanilla ice cream on top of it, top it off with some whipped cream and some drizzle of some, and it's got to be ready whipped cream, and then some caramel drizzle sauce, whatever. It's the best. It is literally my favorite dessert, which I had last night. I got a quick early start on my preparation for Lent. But anyway, I can't think of a better reading to help us prepare for Lent than the first reading. Because the first reading, number one, it deals with the theme of temptation. And this Sunday, the first Sunday of Lent, always deals with temptation. But in dealing with temptation, temptation leads to what? If we give in to temptation, it leads to sin. And of course, Lent is about our own reflection. It should be about our own examination of our own heart to see where we are struggling with sin and seeking to atone for that sin, seeking to try to heal sin from our life, heal our hearts from committing sin. And then all Lent is meant to prepare us then for the celebration of the Paschal mystery, whereby we see how Jesus atones for and conquers sin through his passion, death, and resurrection. But there's more to this passage today. There's more to why this passage is perfect for us for preparing for Lent, because at its heart, though James speaks about blessed is he who perseveres in temptation, though that's a core part of what he's speaking about, I think personally what he's really getting at is the source of temptation. And in our catechism, if we remember our catechism, what are the three sources of temptation? The three sources of temptation are the world, the devil, and the flesh. I took them out of order a little bit on purpose. The world, the devil, and the flesh. And what is the most foundational of those three? It's the flesh. It's not the devil, and it's not the world. It's our flesh. What do we mean by the flesh? By the flesh, we mean our desires, and specifically our disordered desires. Now, James doesn't refer to disordered desires, but when he's speaking about temptation, he's saying temptation doesn't come from God, and because God doesn't tempt no one, he can't. It's against his nature. But he says what? Each person is tempted when? When they are lured and enticed by what? Desire. By his desire, his or her desire. Desire is at the heart of temptation. Why is that? Because desire is that power in us, or that which inclines us in a certain direction. And it's by our desire that we are either ordered towards God or away from God. So towards God going up, away from God going down. But let's incorporate something else about this reading that will help us to really understand this foundational power of our desire. First, we have to St. James, after he speaks about how our desire can lead to sin and sin death, then he says that all good and perfect and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. And what he's referring to there, you could surmise, is that God is himself is goodness. God is goodness itself. He is the source of all goodness. God is perfectly good. Why is that important? Because, and this all comes from St. Thomas Aquinas. So this is kind of like a summary of his moral theology or his theological understanding of things, but that when God creates, he creates to share his goodness with us, to manifest his goodness. And in doing that, he orders us. He orders everything towards something good. And that something good will perfect what he creates. God builds in a desire into every creature for their perfection. For every creature. Rocks have not so much a desire like we have a desire, but they have an inclination towards their perfection. Because God makes them to be a certain way. He makes them to be heavy and solid. So guess where they find their perfection? By simply sitting on the ground. So rocks are heavy. That means if you throw a rock up, it's immediately going to go back down and rest on the ground. Because that's how God designed it. And in its resting place, it's living out its perfection. A rock, so to speak, isn't, it's not reaching its perfection when it's being thrown in the air or it's being pulverized in some way. Just by the nature of how God made the rock. The same thing with like animals, plants. Like God made an acorn to find its perfection becoming a what? An oak tree. And so God likewise have made human beings to seek our own perfection by certain goods that will perfect us. Well, how do we attain those goods that perfect us? Well, God has given us an intellect to know the truth, whereby we can discover those good things that are perfective of us, so that what? Our will, which is where our desire comes from, our will desires those things that are perfective of us. And we go out and we seek them. We pursue them. We have an appetite for them. God has made us with an appetite for perfection. It's not some, perfection, by the way, is not some neurotic pursuit of like a faultless performance. That's not perfection. Perfection is the perfection of our very being, according to the truth of God. And so ultimately, in life, we seek things that are perfective of us, that will fulfill us. We look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We seek food, water, shelter, friends. All those things are perfective of us. Being educated perfects us. It helps to fulfill our potential. By perfection, that's kind of what we mean, fulfilling our potential, according to how God made us as human beings. And us individually. We all perceive in ourselves that we can do certain things. We have the potential to do certain things. And we set out with our life trying to fulfill those things. And that helps us to live and to engage in what we call higher goods, which ultimately involves communion with people, maybe having a spouse and having kids. But that's not enough. God has made us ultimately for himself, because God is the one who is perfectly good. And so therefore, as we pursue him and seek to be united with him, he is the one who perfects us totally, completely. He alone can fulfill that hunger of our heart, that desire in our heart, that appetite that he has designed in us to seek perfection, to seek fulfillment, which ultimately means happiness. Only God can do this. That's why God has made us, to ultimately find perfection in him, fulfillment, happiness, and that because God is the perfect good. And so this whole reading kind of revolves around that understanding, because if we desire, because we as free human beings, right? The reason why temptation applies to human beings and not rocks or animals is because only human beings can desire in a way that reflects freedom. We can we can choose what we desire. We can't choose. I mean, we are naturally made to seek fulfillment, perfection, and happiness. That is in us no matter what. Nothing can take that away. But what we choose to pursue to find that fulfillment is where temptation and sin comes in. Because we can choose lesser goods as thinking that like the lesser goods of like, let's say, money, fame, pleasure, power. Those are all goods. They're created goods, but they're goods. But they're not ultimate goods. They're not the ultimate good. They're not God. They can't perfect us. They can't make us happy perfectly. And so what happens with sin is when we live our life with our desire, seeking these lesser goods, thinking that they can ultimately perfect us and fulfill us. That's what sin is. And to the degree that our wills pursue these lesser goods, money, sex, and power, is to the degree that our will has a disorder in it. It has a disordered desire. You see? And so Lent is about facing in our hearts, if we are trying to do an inventory or an assessment of sin in our life, it ultimately comes down to us facing and seeing that, wow, I have a disordered desire for this thing. I have a disordered desire for sex, which expresses itself in pornography. I have a disordered desire for drink, which is a good, but not if I abuse alcohol. I have a disordered desire for money, which is a good, not though if it causes me to be a workaholic and neglect other goods in my life, like maybe my family or my faith. So this is why this reading is so important for us, because I think that Lent is so much more than just what am I giving up. Lent should be a time when we focus on where is our desire ordered towards. Do I desire God above all things? Really ask that of yourself. I do. And it's kind of scary because, like, if I find myself, I think I'm more. My desire is more towards this. In other words, my desire towards God is not perfect. I don't know if I really desire God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. And that can be scary for me. Why? Because it means I have to die to something. I have to let go of things, detach myself from something. Because maybe I'm leaning too much, I'm desiring too much of this one thing because it might give me more comfort. I think that might fulfill me more than really surrendering fully to God. That's why this is so important. Because the structure of sin, you know what the structure of sin is? Sin is two movements. Sin is when we move away from God and towards a created good, a mutable good. Sin is us turning away from God as the uncreated good towards some created good. And what allows that to happen is our desire. Our desire allows that to happen. Now, obviously, the world and the devil come into this temptation to move us in that direction because, original sin gives us this disordered desire for earthly things. And so the things of the world are always tempting us in that way to pursue them in a disordered manner. And the devil knows what our disordered inclinations are, and he plays on that, manipulates us in that way. Because the devil does not want us to be happy, does not want us to be fulfilled, does not want us to be perfected in God's goodness. Because he himself screwed it all up. And so he wants us to screw up. Sin is nothing but a failure in finding ultimate fulfillment, perfection, and happiness in God. That's what sin is. That's what it seeks to attain. That's why Lent has to be more than just, well, I'm going to white knuckle and give up chocolate. I'm going to white knuckle it and give up social media. Those are good things. But what is it ordered towards? Are you doing it because you want to love God more, because you want to desire God more, or because you can, at the end of the 40 days or whatever, you can pat yourself on the back, good job, I did it. That's kind of like a wasted Lent. You can make it through Lent giving up stuff. Good job. But have you grown in faith, hope, and charity? If you haven't, what's the point? Right? In faith, hope, and charity, charity, that supernatural virtue we call charity, is what orders our desire towards God. It's what allows, it's what connects us to God. Right? Faith helps us to understand where our true end is, what truly satisfies and fulfills us, so that our will, by grace, desires it. We are more ordered and locked in, loving God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's what we should do. And I'm just going to end with this. If you want to practice something concretely in this way, then when we are trying to overcome sin in our life, it's important to undo those two movements of sin, the first one being away from God, the second one being towards a created good, or towards a created good which leads us away from God, however you want to look at it. But it's important to undo the knot of sin in our desire by saying, I do not want that sin. I renounce that sin. I renounce my disordered desire towards that sin. And I want God. I want to do things God's way. I want to pursue the true good. So like, for example, if someone does struggle with the sins of the flesh, you could say, Jesus, in your name, I renounce this sin, whatever it could be. Pornography, impure acts with myself, impure acts with somebody else. Renouncing that and saying, God, I want to live my sexuality according to your plan. So your desire is seeking something, the good that is truly made for our humanity. The same thing with like drink. If you abuse alcohol, if you abuse drink, if you're greedy, I renounce a disordered desire for money. I renounce that. And Lord, I want to have an ordered desire for money. I want to have a healthy relationship with money according to your plan. Because I want you, God, above all things. So I want to order all created things towards you. That's the healing of the soul. That's what grace is meant to do. That's what confession is meant to do. So, which is why sometimes I say that it's okay to reconfess a sin, not because you not because you don't believe it's not forgiven, but because you want to purify your desire. You want to heal it. So it's okay to say, God, I'm sorry for this sin, because I want to deepen my sorrow, because I want to deepen my hatred for sin. That's why it's okay. Don't reconfess a sin if you don't believe you haven't been, just because you don't want to confess a sin because you don't believe you haven't been forgiven. You can do a devotional confession because, Lord, I'm reflecting more deeply, and I'm really sorry that I did that in the past. I know you've forgiven me, but I want to just purify my desire more. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. So anyway, I love this passage today. It contains so much about the truth of who we are as human beings, who God is and how he's made us. And so that's why it's a perfect preparation for entering into another season, another 40 days of Lent. We all tremble at it, but it's good for us. We need Lent in our life because we need purification, because God has made us for so much more. He has given us an appetite for perfection, not destruction. So let's live the way God has called us to live and to be in this life so we can find that perfection and fulfillment in the next.